Hello, Miss Ashika. So nice to see you here. Thank you so much for coming in.
Hi.
Nice to. Hello, Mr. Vishal.
I drove everybody.
Yes.
I gave them the carrot.
Very good. Fantastic. Well done. When Aunt Ashika is in the house, nothing to worry about. That's it. No, grateful. Absolutely. Hi, Smita. Great going. Thanks for the invite. Very interesting topic. Everybody, good afternoon. We are going to wait for a few of our other colleagues who are joining in from other parts of the world. A very exciting topic. So we will be shortly starting in a couple of minutes more. Thank you.
I think, Vishal, you'll keep getting these requests to come in, I think, to admit, I think.
No worries. Absolutely fine. Just keep it coming. Just wait for another. I think there's. So, yes, hopefully. Ashika, thank you so much for joining. Yes, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Likewise, and I was wondering, big shout out to Lenny. I don't know whether she's here, she's not here, but she's been organizing all this crazy stuff. So yeah.
Absolutely. Great as well.
So we're going to wait for another 2 more minutes?
Yes, perfect. We'll be okay to go. And
Rupa ma'am, good to see you.
I have Sophia joining us from Indonesia. Hi, Sophia, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for running this.
Yeah, cheers, no problem. Pleasure is ours. Hopefully we could actually understand more school context across the conversation. Great stuff. We see more people joining us. Oh, there it is. Okay. We are going to start in a minute's time. Thank you, everyone.
Lots of good afternoons pouring in. So I believe we are all in the Asian context. I think most of us. I don't see any good mornings yet or good nights yet.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, in Poland, it's almost 10 a.m. So it's a good, decent time to start the day with a Zoom meeting with you. So thank you for having me here as well.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for dropping by. Great.
My pleasure.
Okay, right. So.
Good to see large numbers pouring in. Okay, I think I'll just begin with the welcome bit. I think it's just to get that one out while everybody still kept coming in.
Yeah.
Hi, so my name is Smita, and I've been in the IB for about 7 years. Currently, I'm in a school in Kazakhstan as the MYP coordinator. My co-host, Mr. Vishal Ganguly, is also in a school in Kazakhstan. He's currently as the head of middle years, but soon moving in as the senior school principal in a school in Tokyo. He's also a CIS evaluation team member and a DP workshop leader. Big shout out to Lenny. I don't know whether she's here or she's not here, but big shout out to her. And a huge thanks to Miss Ashika, who's been such a support to all of us. You know, we're all going through these Zoom sessions and she's always there. So a big thank you to her as well. Okay. So typically what Vishal and I really want to achieve through this session is we want to talk about transition, why it is important. But we also want to hear from you all. How are you all doing it at your school? What have been the challenges, some good practices? How have you evolved over the years? This is also for those schools who have not yet thought about this up close. We hope that by the end of this session, you'll be able to take away a few things from our workshop and you'll be able to soon implement them in your schools. So, Vishal, do you want to hop on and first talk about the transition from MYP to DP?
Absolutely. In the meantime, I think, Smita, there are some other of our colleagues who are joining in. So if you can just manage that one as well. Great. I'll just, thanks everybody. I mean, I don't know how to really say thanks to you. I'm just sharing this big screen. I will be starting from the DP part. MYP to DP is extremely demanding and challenging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go directly to parents' questions. Actually, I would like to start from there because, as schools, parents are extremely worried that MYP stands on a very thin ice, if I use that expression. And they have certain questions like, how do I ensure my child succeeds in the DP coming from MYP? And all of those questions you can see. So generally starting, there are a lot of challenges when you run an MYP course in your school, as you would know, and do chip in, step in as well from time to time with your experience, because as you know, MYP is a very school-based decision and it's very contextual. So all your decisions and everything that will get into place, it's your school. You have to decide what your school, how it molds with the local context. Because I know, let's say I'm coming from Jakarta. I know that Jakarta has got a different requirements altogether. Indonesian zone and Malaysian zone have got their own local context. So as well as Vietnamese and Thai context. So in this, I'm just going to starting off defining transition. Basically, there's nothing much to define. It's just ensuring that there is a continuity from program to program. I'm just not defining anything at all. Just keeping it simple, keeping it straightforward to your school. Just making sure that DP, Adrian was having a quick chat yesterday. He dropped a note as well on the extreme left on your screen where it says coherence on concepts. That's very, very kind of him. Adrian from the Bavarian School is the Director of Teaching and Learning as well. He's very proactive as well in the MYP coordinators chat. So he also chipped in yesterday. And just to keep long story short, is that the content in the diploma program is extremely demanding. It's very content specific. And there are a lot of teachers, what you could do is to break down some of the contents from grade 9 itself or grade 8 itself, because you're hitting two birds by one stone, saying that, you're not only promoting DP to your MYP grades 8 and 9 onwards. Number two, you are actually preparing them for the diploma program. That is as well as is a very good issue to handle. And obviously, number three is that your students, no matter if they continue diploma program in your school, which I should not say, I hope they continue in your school. If they don't, you at least get that startup, the starting up, a point of departure to prepare them academically. If they go to AP school or a non-IB, any other non-IB school as well, A-level school, that's fine. That's up to their decision. So keeping it simple, checking your school context, is you have to see whether the National Ministry of Education is interfering a lot, because these days, Ministry of Education, they do tend to be flexible because they understand the value of MYP as a framework. And how MYP is advertising internationally as we are starting up examination, we are giving out certificates. So it's like a international recognition as well. So check the context of your school with the MOE, because why transition is heavily influenced with MOE, because some students opt to go for a diploma program. Some students will opt to go for a non-DP program, just like Smita's and my school as well, what we are going through. So please do check that. And of course, one of the most important thing, one of the defining, just simplifying transition is just to establish an academic tracking system. It's just like, how would you track academically your students? As an example, in language acquisition, we have established a language profile for each student. That comes into, where we establish a simplified language profile. At the end of each semester, we fill up for each class. So that gets distributed to all English teachers. So we keep a close track of that. So at the end of the year, we could actually, it is evidence-based, and we just get to see how we could actually disperse that and put them in the next phase of language acquisition. Because please remember, if you have evaluation and authorization coming up, this is going to be your biggest headache as an MYP coordinator. If you are an MYP coordinator or head of language acquisition, they are going to chase you. Please forgive me if you are a visiting team members. I know you would understand what I mean. So this would be one of the things. So that's why if you get into the left-hand side of the screen where say language placement, language policy, profile, and and placement issues. So basically, cutting long story short, from my context for the DPs to please do cut down. Break it down into MYP. Although I know breaking down the content of DP into MYP, especially for maths, because maths is now analytical and loads of stuff are happening. So number one, mathematics. Please have a look at the mathematics part of it, how you could introduce and promote them, middle years program. Number two, how would you look to promote language acquisition in DP? We have language P, French ab initio. Please have a thought. Does your school offer foreign language? If yes, well done. How could we break that down? Number three, please check out e-assessment guides. Of course, all of these things, they have the topic, blueprints, etc. Could you start promoting e-assessment from grade 7 onwards? Because normally rumors, stories, conversations are roaming around that 2022, 23, DP might go full on e-assessment. So if your school is doing really well on e-assessment, go for it. Great stuff. And of course, one of my other points that comes out, please check if you're, as an MYP coordinator, your another big headache would be how do you establish a solid MYP program? Take inspiration. Don't worry. Take inspiration from IGCSE, DP content, everything that you could. I know it's like a mixed salad bowl, but if it works, great. Why not? In our case, in our context, we have the pressure of MOE on us. We have the pressure of other requirements in our context. So I think, Smita will be touching all of those aspects during this session. So please have a look at your written curriculum at the same time. If there are topics that you think in each subject that are valid. So for mathematics, for example, get your DP teachers teaching MYP as well. I know that it will be a mandatory thing that all DP teachers are MYP teachers. But in our context, mine and Smita's context, we have bilingual stream running. So it's a challenge. Number one, Russian-speaking teachers only. So what are they going to teach the students? Because those students will be placed in Russian universities and Central Asian universities. But yet they want to do e-assessment for international recognition. So we are training the local teachers, local hires to understand why DP is so important, breaking it down to MYP. That's one aspect as well. Any other question? Would you like to break it up in this session, please? You're free to ask Smita and myself.
Vishal, good afternoon. I'm Tanvinder from India.
Hi, Tanvinder.
So, there is a lot of resistance from DP teachers to teach MYP lessons. And it's only the head of the department who ultimately agrees to come in and do those lessons for MYP. It turns out to be like that. So is DP really going to push into the status where, is IB pushing into to make sure that the DP teachers start teaching MYP? I just wanted to know that.
It's a tricky question, to be very honest, Tanvinder, because the thing is that for 4 years together, we always, as school, we always made sure that all DP teachers should teach MYP because of 2 or 3 or multiple reasons. And I'm sure,
right.
Recordings, once this session gets recorded, and I'm sure we will have continuous inputs from other experienced MYP coordinators. But in my context and in my view, especially in the Asian context, I would look at, it is recommended, not that it's written black and white everywhere, but we promote that as an assumption to all the schools. So that's why, number one, it's good that DP teachers teaches MYP. Number two, there is a continuity, like, because DP teachers know what's really happening on the DP level, because MYP, they will say, oh, we are done with personal project. Done, my job is over. But when the real problem starts when they get into DP. Let's say, I'll give you an example. I'm not against any board examination, but I would say the content of biology, for example, it's very different in IGCSE than IBDP. So that's the biggest content of all I look at, generally speaking. I'm not stepping into anybody's shoes. So that, and number two, of course, number three, it will be looked at as a promotion, because, you know, students are saying, oh, here's a DP teacher who's teaching us for 2-3 years from grade 9. He's preparing us how to evolve through MYP. So there is, by keeping the e-assessment content, the national context, and the DP context. So that's why I would not say IB explicitly says it, but I would say there is a strong assumption, and that's why it's a school-based decision to see how it could do well.
Mr. Vishal,
thank you.
A question here. I'm Savita again from India.
Yeah,
my question is like, whereas for MYP, our focus is like e-assessment, right? So grade 7, 8, 9, we are training them towards e-assessment. But then at the same time, we are trying to mix up DP as well. Are we not somehow compromising on their e-assessment performance, or does it benefit actually by doing this, is my question.
Yeah, it does benefit, to be very honest with you, because I do know that some schools are facing high pressure in meeting the e-assessment. And some principal, let's say my previous principal in Jakarta, he emphasized very much on introducing and practice modes of e-assessment right from grade 7. So I would say, I would just keep it simple that if you can, depending on your school context and how things go, try to see how much you could promote DP into the MYP. It's not at all compromising. Why, I would say, because you're fulfilling the MYP assessment requirements, that's fine, but you could actually look as a DP topics to actually challenge or create higher order thinking challenge to your students as well. So I'll just keep it short to that, because I know I'm consuming Smita's time a lot in our part for MYP. But yeah, just do drop the questions and we will get back to you on time. No problem.
And I also just want to add to that, that it is not necessary that a lot of schools are doing e-assessment. You'll be surprised that a lot of schools are not. In fact, this part of the world where Vishal and I are, we do not do e-assessments actually. And so do a lot of schools otherwise. But coming back to where we started off, so let's look at some common threads that actually tie this whole transition. So for example, if I look at across PYP, MYP, DP, the academic honesty, for instance, does not go anywhere. It stays throughout. Or if you look at the learner profile, it doesn't go anywhere. Sorry, I'm simultaneously admitting people in, so I'm going to be moving it back and forth. But, for a PYP student, questions are very different. They do not want to, like Adrian had mentioned about conceptual understanding, they don't want to drift into there. They have very basic questions. For example, will I still be seeing the same homeroom tutor that I've been seeing who teaches me most of my subjects? Or will it be any different? What will my schedule look like? What about homework? So from a student point of view, it's very different for a PYP student. I think as educators, we need to connect the dots. So for instance, they have a student-led conference or a student-led exhibition in grade 5, and how we connect it to the PP, to the personal project exhibition in the MYP, and eventually the extended essay in DP. Or you talk about how they've been doing the basic transdisciplinary themes, the whole PYP program has been revolving around that, and how you kind of tell them it manifests into the global context, into the MYP. So it's more about connecting the dots, but definitely the PYP students have a very different point of view than the MYP students. At this point of time, I would request, does anybody want to share how they do this whole transition program in their schools? How does it move? Do they have, for instance, a MYP Tasters Day or a DP Tasters Day for that matter? Would anybody like to share?
So maybe I would want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. In my previous school at Edubridge International School, the last 2 weeks of school was, free. There was no teaching learning happening. So at that time, we scheduled those days for transition from PYP to MYP, and also grade 10 into DP. So we had special schedules where Vishal, I think so you'll need to mute some people over here. Dinanath and Mr. Don Hudson, your mics are on. So the background noise is coming. Could you please just mute yourself? So we have specific days. Actually, it was 2 weeks, and we used to have a schedule where students were allowed to go to the different group subjects. So even if it was group 3 economics, you also had business management, so that the students could have some idea about what the subject is about. So we had psychology, we had the subjects whatever we were offering, the students could go attend those classes, and the teachers used to tell them about the course overview, the assessments, how it will be in the 2 years of the program, HL, SL. So it was like a mini orientation, but it was just before the main orientation. Orientation happened after they joined in the DP. There is also another week's orientation, but this was giving them a taste of how it would be. So we used to have sessions on TOK and extended essay also. Okay, what is TOK? What are you looking at in TOK? So those sessions were there for grade 10 going into DP. And for PYP coming into MYP, now in the PYP, the students are in a homeroom setting where they have one teacher who teaches most of the subjects. So the core subjects are taught by one teacher and a co-teacher. But when they come to the MYP, you have different subject group teachers. So then we gave them exposure to maybe an art class or maybe a science class, because in science, you have criteria B and C, where you have to do a lab, where you have to design a lab, write a lab report. Maybe if they are not doing it in the PYP, technically they should be exposed to a template of how the scientific method works. But in case it is not done, at least during that transition time, I used to take grade 6 science. So I used to give them a research question. Instead of telling them to design a task, I used to give them a research question. Which day is the busiest at the mall? So then we used to think about, okay, what will be the hypothesis? What will be your variable? So that kind of, giving them some idea of how a science class would be or a science assessment lab would be was given to them in those 2 weeks of the transition time. Also, we had questions like, what do you like most about PYP? What will you miss? And what are you anxious about if you are going to come to MYP? So most of them used to write about assessments. They used to tell summative assessments, test, exam. So that is there from PYP coming to MYP, grade 6. So how do you explain them what assessments would be, how it will be, how you should not be so scared about, taking exams, because I feel that in grade 12, the students have to sit for an examination. So students need to, there are skills that are needed for exam taking. Exam taking is also, exam taking skills are also important if a student has to sit for an exam. I have seen students who had no exposure of giving exams till grade 8, and suddenly in grade 9 and 10, when they have to be prepared for an examination, they are anxious, they get fever and all that. So that's why maybe look at school policy where you could give a semester examination. I'm not saying full length 1.5 hour or whatever, 80 minutes paper or an hour's paper, giving them the taste of how an on-screen exam or a summative written assessment would be under exam conditions. That is a good idea. So these are the things that at least I did as an MYP coordinator in order to make that transition from PYP to MYP, and the DP coordinator planned for the transition from MYP to DP.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shekhar, for that. I'm just reading Erin's message right here, which says, we have taster days for both of these transitions, and our foreign language teachers visit grade 5 PYP classes. We also start to bring grade 5 lessons. So that's thank you so much, Erin, for writing that in. Yeah.
Also, just sorry to interrupt you, Smita. I have a message, a very important message also from Adrian, all the way, that it is true that if it's very important as well is to drive your program across MYP to ensure that there's transition into DP. Just not into content, because that's something where DP teachers are focusing on content because they are very much content oriented, educators. But if we look at right from PYP coming into the skills of transfers and everything that's happening, that's why it's a very important thing to focus on not only just content but also on the other aspects, holistic aspect, just like I think Erin said, and as what Kate says in this as well, that focusing on transition tasted days or focusing on learning skills, ATLs, and all of those things. Because the real struggle, what we see is, like, let's say in a Central Asian context, is that we are following by the rules, actually what's written in black and white on that guide. But hey, we are actually trying to adapt. So that keeping international mindedness in mind, please do revisit your school mission and vision statements, because that's why your students are, that's why they are there in your school, that's why they are studying. So please do revisit them, and just not sticking to black and white, those concepts. These ATLs and all of these concepts are on your table, and it's like a buffet. Like, you pick the one that you like, actually, which suits your context, and go ahead. So that's why, very important message to DP teachers, not just content, but take a shift towards ATL. That's why I come back to either Tanvinder or Savita's question, that's why it's very important for schools to take decisions to get DP teachers understand MYP, because for them it's like, if you give the book, nothing against DP teachers, but if you give the book, they will look for the content and they will say, this is the content, this is what I'm going to teach. Just like Stuart Jones did when he trained us all IB workshop leaders in Chiang Mai 2013. He just said, this is the difference between DP teachers and MYP teachers. But again, just keeping long story short, yes, emphasizing on these international mindedness and contextual learning, it's very important. And off you go, Smita. I pass it on to you.
All right. So I also want to take a bit of a focus on some other key stakeholders that play a role in this whole transition program. Of course, you have your mainstream teachers for maths, for English, for the native language, but we also have stakeholders like, for example, students with additional learning support. So what about them? So students who've been on additional learning support, whether in grade 5 or in grade 10. So what kind of a transition happens for them? If there's somebody who wants to talk about it, more than welcome. Also, likewise, people struggling in the native language, or for that matter, even counselors to some extent. So students with some behavioral concerns and things like that. So how is it that you all deal with these kind of transitions? It's not just curriculum per se, it's actually even a larger picture. So if somebody wants to talk about that, we'd love to hear. I can hear Tanvinder right that counselors bridge the gap, but any other details would be lovely in here.
Sure. So we have days wherein we get the PYP counselors interact with the MYP counselors, and at the same time we have instructional coaches who are a part of this meeting to support the students further when they jump into MYP, and all the details, whatever challenges the students in PYP are facing, are shared with the counselors, so that in case they have to handhold them and support them with ALS needs or English language support needs, that is taken forward in MYP. That's how we do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We also want to talk about students, for example, subjects like art, music, theater, sports. I think it's important to know what kind of students you're getting in. You run your own differential programs. It's important to know students who have exceptional talent in these fields and how you want to take it up in MYP or in DP. ICT, for example, in PYP, we've had this whole conversation between, in fact, one of the messages that came into my inbox was that this transition, is it only for about students? But no, equally for not just the teachers, but for example, the homeroom tutors. And in my school, we have the system of curators. We do not have form room tutors, we have curators. So it's very essential to have a dialogue between them, because if you go back to my Padlet wall, I've written that as educators, it is very important to know about the students that we are teaching. It makes our learning much more effective that way. Okay, so I'm going to take on a few more questions that are coming in here. So the last one is from, we have Mike. We have an exhibition in grade 6. Okay. I think there are more of concerns about science and maths as I read from the chats, and more. So I'm sure your vertical articulation helps you a big deal in that, because you know, as you plan through the concepts and skills that you want to give into your students, I think in many ways you make the transition or the bridging right therein. And it's not just for the mainstream subjects, as I said, it could be for all the subjects. It is equally important that when you do your planning as a core team, because one of the questions said, how do we begin it all? So as a core team of whether it's the PYP or the MYP or DP, you come together to decide which subject areas you want to focus on. You decide that how are we going to take this forward. So for instance, for students, probably it's a one-day affair. So on one of those tasters days, you may have a formal or semi-informal session between a grade 5 student and some students of grade 6, or a grade 10 student and a grade 11 student. But beyond that, beyond those sessions, let's say, what about parents? At what stage do they come in? Because at least in the Asian context, I know they have a lot of questions and they have a lot of doubts about that. So how do you bring in? So now what was happening is, one of these tasters days, a lot of parents were not showing up. So typically when we have the PYP exhibition, and that's when a lot of parents do show up, we try and hold an orientation day program for them. Likewise, for DP, subject choices, which is huge, we try and do it on a personal project exhibition, or we try and do it during a parent-teacher meeting, in which you have more clientele. Okay, so since we have about 6 minutes remaining, if there's anybody who wants to pop in, we'll try to do a follow-up session, because we do have some questions which have still not been answered, and we'll try and do a follow-up session on this as well. But if there's anybody who wants to pitch in right now, most welcome.
Yeah, I see a very interesting note from Adrian. Everyone, so I'm just, Adrian, if you may allow, can I read your message as well? The trouble is, many science and maths teachers are focused on syllabus. Absolutely, absolutely on that. Sit alongside them and ask them what they want kids to know, and it quickly moves to concepts. Absolutely, totally agree on this as well. It's a great piece of support given by Adrian as well, and this is why I advocate building from disciplinary concepts to key concepts rather than working down from a key concept to a unit. Absolutely spot on. So I can't agree more on this one. So this is a very important aspect, is because that's one of your challenge as not only as an MYP teacher but also as an MYP, be it a head of department or any other important role, including coordination as well, is to how do you break them down and how do you actually transfer that from one part to another to make it more simplified. Because let me cite you again another Indonesian example that we had. Indonesian parents are very much are just like any other parents in the world. Their teaching and learning were very different from a different decade. Ours is totally different. So when you introduce MYP to them, especially for candidate schools, that's another challenge. How would you break it down step by step? So as we say in the Indonesian language, hati-hati, careful. So, you know, be safe as well. So just make sure that keeping it simple, and as well as this. Any other questions, Smita, would you like to pick up, please?
Yes, Vishal, somebody's asked me about a timeline that they could look at. So I'm going to just share something with you all very quickly. Depending upon, so most schools probably do it before the year end. So this is, for example, I'm just showing you, I hope you can see it. So this is just a fair timeline we've looked at. When do we start talking to the parents? What kind of resources? Because one of the things that I've written in the Padlet is, what kind of documentation do you require? And that was somebody's question as well. So yes, you do need to look at unit plans. You need to look at curriculum overview. You need to look at, you need to read various reports, whether it's the counselor's report or whether it's a report in various subject specialists. And of course, we do plan some lesson visits. So for instance, typically in maths or in languages, and we've also included ICTs here, follow-up meetings. And then what you see highlighted is meeting between PYP homeroom tutors and MYP curators. So just to say that this is how it looks like. Most schools do it differently. They do it, say, sometime around May. It's easier. The students don't forget that way. It's still fresh in their memory. So this is just a fun example, and I'll put this up as well. And I had another question about possible steps. I'm going to show this to y'all. So, sorry, I'm trying to admit somebody in. So as you can see, there are initial meetings between the core teachers. Sorry, go back. Okay. Class observations, interactions of specialist teachers, it's very important for them to know. The counselors, we've looked at probably a joint assembly where we have formal, informal meetings between grade 5 students or grade 6 students or 10 and 11. Probably a short video to show them what a typical day in school looks like, smaller group discussions, and then of course, meeting with the parents and a closure to it. So I'll put this up as well. But if there's anything else that you want to bring it up in the last few minutes, please feel free to do so. Okay. We have, okay, Sophia says we'll check it out. And Adrian has always been, he's been sending a lot of stuff. Thank you so much, Adrian. This is wonderful.
Yeah, thanks millions, Adrian. Thank you very much for helping us out as well.
So yes, Sanjida has raised her hand. I believe she has a question. Yes, Sanjida. Can you hear me, Sanjida? Okay, we lost her. Sorry. Okay, she had raised her hand for something.
Yeah. If not, please do not worry. Just type your questions on the chat box or email it to please email it to Smita, and let us know. And as well as we are going to have a follow-up session because there are some few interesting other topics coming up. So any other questions, please. Smita, is that okay if you can type your email ID on the chat box as well?
It's there actually, Vishal, it's there on the Padlet. So if you go to the Padlet,
yes,
the email address is there, and we look forward to your questions coming in.
Great. Effects of quarantine. Sorry, Smita. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Any other points to cover, Smita? Any share?
I think for now, because we just have less than a minute, so I'm going to pause here. But we look forward to more sessions in there. Where do we get access to the Padlet? It's there on the link, and I'll put it here again as well. So let me put it here as well. Okay. Let me just put this thing. Guys,
all right. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah. And thank you, everyone. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And we look forward to another session. Ciao.
Thank you.
Have a good Saturday evening, everyone. Thank you.